My name is Thomas Elliott. I'm 54 years old, a retired postal worker from Kansas City. I spent my whole life delivering other people's messages, birthday cards, love letters, even wedding invites, never imagining the day would come when my own daughter would send me one that broke my heart. Her email was short. Don't come to my wedding. Just watch through live stream. I stared at those words in silence. No explanation. No goodbye. Just exile in the form of a screen. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. But it didn't shatter. Sharpened. Before we begin, tell me. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you raised with your whole heart? Let me know in the comments. And if this story grips you even a little, hit that subscribe button. 'Cause what happens next changes everything. The morning began like any other. Quiet, slow, and familiar. I brewed my usual coffee, stared out at the bare trees from my small kitchen window in Kansas City, and fed the neighbor's cat that had unofficially become mine. Retirement had made life slower, but not emptier. I had my routines, my books, my memories. And her, Emily, my daughter. For 23 years, she had been the very rhythm of my days. I raised her alone after her mother left us when Emily was only 5. We struggled, sure. I delivered mail during the day, cleaned offices at night, and somehow managed to make her school plays, parent meetings, and every scraped knee in between. She was my everything. So when my phone pinged that morning, a simple notification from her name, I smiled. Maybe it was a picture of her wedding dress. Maybe she wanted advice. Or maybe, just maybe, she missed me. But what I opened stopped the world. Dad, please don't come to the wedding. Just watch it through live stream, okay? There were no other words. No I love you. No reason. No explanation. I sat still, coffee going cold, hands shaking. The cat meowed softly beside me, like it could sense something was breaking. I read it again, and again, and again. First I thought it was a mistake. Joke. I even checked the email header to be sure it wasn't someone else. But it was her. My Emily. My daughter. The girl who used to call me hero in her bedtime drawings had now quietly erased me from the biggest day of her life. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, something deeper welled up. Confusion. Then anger. Then that familiar numbness that comes when the world shifts beneath your feet and you're the only one who notices. Picked up the phone. Dialed. Rang once. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. Then I called her best friend. No answer. Her fiancé, no response. I scrolled through every picture we had taken, from her first steps to her graduation photo, where I stood beside her in a wrinkled suit and she beamed like the sun. What had changed? I had always suspected something was off since she met that man. Arthur. He was polished, wealthy, came from one of those families where last names open doors. The kind who look at postal workers like me as background scenery. Emily changed after him. She started dressing differently, speaking with a tone that didn't feel like hers. And worst of all, she stopped coming home. When I met Arthur, he barely looked me in the eye. He smiled, but it never touched his voice. The kind of man who shakes your hand like he's disinfecting it afterward. He once told me, "We're giving Emily a new life. She won't need to hold on to the old one anymore." I didn't understand what he meant back then. Now I do. That email was his doing. I was sure of it. But what he didn't know, what even Emily had forgotten, was that I wasn't just a man who delivered mail. I was a man who listened, who watched, who remembered. And if they wanted to keep me away from the wedding, they should have tried harder. Because I had no intention of staying behind a screen. I had a plan. And I knew exactly where to begin. The apartment felt colder that day. Not because of the weather, though Kansas City winters are known to bite, but because something inside me had gone numb. I sat at the kitchen table, that email still glowing on the screen of my phone, mocking me with its silence. There were no follow-up messages. No clarification. No sorry dad. Not even a typo or emoji to hint that maybe it was sent in haste. Nothing. I placed the phone down, face up, as if I expected it to light up any second and say just kidding. But it didn't. Instead, all I had was that single, emotionless line. "Dad, please don't come to the wedding. Just watch it through live stream, okay?" I whispered the words out loud to myself, as if hearing them from my own mouth might make them feel more real. But they didn't. They felt foreign, cruel. I stood up, walked to the kitchen sink, and ran cold water over my hands. The faucet squeaked the way it always had. Another thing I never got around to fixing. Like the broken cabinet hinge. Or the door that always stuck in summer. It wasn't a fancy place. It was small, quiet, and old. But it was filled with memories. All of them hers. Her drawings were still taped to the fridge. Faded stick figures of me holding her hand, a crooked sun in the corner of the paper, a big heart drawn over both our heads. In the bottom corner she had once written, in her messy kindergarten scrawl, "Me and Daddy forever. Forever." I wiped my hands on a towel and walked toward her room. It hadn't changed much. The same posters on the walls. The same bookshelf of fairy tales and young adult novels. Her graduation gown was still hanging on the back of the door. I hadn't touched anything. I couldn't. I sat down on the edge of her bed, feeling the indent of where her tiny frame used to curl up every night. I could still smell traces of her old shampoo in the pillowcase. This was the space where we had read bedtime stories, talked about boys, where she had cried over her first heartbreak, where she whispered to me, "I'll never let anyone take me away from you." Now she was gone. And she didn't even want me at her wedding. I pulled out an old photo album from beneath the bed. The pages crinkled from years of handling. Picture after picture. Us at the zoo, her first day of school, Halloween costumes I made from cardboard and dollar store glitter. I paused at one where she sat on my shoulders, laughing with cotton candy all over her face. I remembered how she had looked down and said, "I'm taller than everyone now, Daddy." And I had answered, "You'll always be taller when I'm holding you." I closed the album. But now someone else was holding her. Someone who saw no space for me. Someone who thought they could rewrite her story, and mine. I walked back into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. It was shaking in my hand. Not from fear. Not even from sadness. From the slow burn of betrayal. I didn't need her to choose between me and her future. I never asked for that. All I ever wanted was to be a part of her joy. To stand quietly at the back of the room and watch my daughter glow. But instead I'd been cut out. Erased like a stain from the family photo. And still no call. No knock. No apology. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through her social media. Wedding hashtags. Engagement photos. Smiling faces. Caption after caption of blessed. Forever starts now, the perfect couple. Her face was radiant. But it didn't look like her anymore. Not to me. Every photo had Arthur in it. His arm around her waist. His hand on her knee. His smile too perfect. Too polished. I zoomed in on one of the pictures. His eyes weren't looking at her. They were looking past the camera. Distant. Hello. He wasn't in love. He was posing. I scrolled further until I found the photo from their engagement party. It was posted by Arthur's sister. The caption read, "Finally bringing Emily into the Kingsley family. Goodbye small-town drama, hello class." My chest tightened. That was it, wasn't it? They didn't just want to marry her. They wanted to own her. To sculpt her into their world and erase every trace of where she came from. Including me. I had seen this kind of thing before. In books. In gossip stories. In TV shows. But never in my own home. Never with my daughter. I looked again at the email. Read it slowly. Word by word. Don't come to the wedding. Just watch it through live stream. B. It wasn't just a rejection. It was a command. Dismissal. Cold push behind a screen. Like I was some distant relative who didn't matter. But they didn't understand what they'd done. They had cut out the one man who knew Emily best. The one who knew where she had come from. Who she really was. How she laughed with her mouth wide open. How she hated roses but loved sunflowers. How she used to bite her lip when she was unsure. I knew the real Emily. And now, they were burying her under layers of silk and diamonds. I picked up my phone and opened the calendar. The wedding was 4 days away. The live stream link was included in the email. Clicked it. A bland page appeared. Wedding of Emily Grace Elliott and Arthur James Kingsley. Saturday, 4 p.m. Streaming will begin shortly before the ceremony. A knot twisted in my stomach. They really meant to keep me out. But I wasn't going to be locked out of my daughter's life by a hyperlink. Arthur had made one mistake. He underestimated me. I wasn't just a former postal worker. I had delivered letters into every neighborhood in the city. I knew people. I knew back doors. I knew secrets. And I knew how to disappear when I needed to. I stared out the window, watching the city blur under the gray sky. 4 days. That's all I had. 4 days to find out the truth. 4 days to see if this wedding was really what Emily wanted. 4 days to make sure my daughter wasn't marrying into a lie. I didn't want to destroy anything. I just wanted to see her eyes up close. Hear her voice without a microphone. And if I found something, anything, that proved she was being pushed or silenced, then Arthur wouldn't just regret sending that email. He would regret ever opening the door to my family in the first place. 4 days may seem short to most people, but when your heart is on fire and the truth is hiding just out of reach, every minute becomes a battleground. The morning after the email, I woke up before the sun, heart pounding like I was 20 again, not a 54-year-old man who hadn't shaved in days. My first instinct was to storm to their place, to show up unannounced and demand answers. But I knew better. Emotion without plan only creates more damage. And I couldn't afford to give them that. Especially not Arthur. I took a shower and trimmed my beard, brushing down the salt and pepper edges that had taken over since retirement. I put on my old service jacket, not because I had deliveries to make, but because it reminded me who I was. Reliable, patient, invisible when needed. Arthur lived in the upscale part of town. Willow Ridge. Big stone homes, luxury cars, security gates that judged you before the guards even did. It was the kind of place where neighbors didn't wave unless you wore a suit or had a famous last name. I didn't belong there, but that had never stopped me before. I drove an old sedan that wheezed at every stoplight. Its paint had peeled, and the muffler groaned like an old man in winter. But it got me there. I parked a block away and walked the rest on foot, blending in with the early joggers and gardeners. Arthur's family estate wasn't hard to spot. Tall wrought iron gates, hedges shaped like swans, and a flagstone lower in the distance. Birds chirping. And then voices. She doesn't need to know about it. Not until after the ceremony. Arthur's voice. Cold. Clear. Another man replied, lower and urgent. You're playing with fire, Arthur. If this gets out. It won't. I've handled her father. He's not coming. My jaw clenched. Handled. I stepped back into the hedges just as the patio doors opened. Arthur emerged, holding a glass of something expensive, dressed like a man who had never worried about rent. Behind him followed another man. Older, darker suit, nervous eyes. I watched from the leaves, not breathing. I said we're keeping it quiet until the honeymoon, Arthur continued. Besides, what's he going to do? Send a letter. They both laughed. I didn't know what the secret was yet. But I knew one thing with every beat of my heart. He was lying to her. And the wedding was the curtain he planned to hide it behind. I needed more. I walked back the way I came, thoughts racing. If I went to Emily with nothing but suspicion, she'd shut down. She was too deep under his spell. But if I had proof, if I could find out what Arthur was hiding, maybe I could still reach her. I went to the only person who might know something outside the family. June had been Emily's best friend since high school. They'd shared lockers, secrets, and heartbreaks. But after the engagement, their photos together stopped. June hadn't been at the bridal shower. Hadn't posted a single congratulatory message. It stood out in a world where everything is shared online. I found her apartment with the help of a few old contacts from my mail routes. It was a quiet building, 3 stories, a bit run down, the kind of place with more plants on balconies than people in the hallways. She opened the door after the second knock. Hair messy, sweatshirt oversized. Eyes red like she hadn't slept right in days. "Mr. Elliot," she blinked. "I need to talk to you," I said softly. "About Emily. And Arthur." She hesitated, eyes scanning the hallway, then stepped aside. The place smelled of old coffee and burning candles. Books scattered on the table. A laptop open with a half-written essay. She didn't say anything for a moment, just poured me some tea and sat across the table, arms folded. "You're not supposed to be involved," she finally said. "That's what he told you?" I asked. Her eyes flinched. I leaned forward. "June, she sent me an email. Told me not to come. To watch through live stream. That's not my daughter talking. That's someone who's afraid." June swallowed hard. "Arthur doesn't like people asking questions. Then we need to ask louder." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He made her sign something." My blood froze. "A prenup?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, something else. Not financial. Personal. It had conditions. About privacy. About her past. About you." I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. Why would he need her to sign something about me? June looked like she was about to speak, then hesitated. "Please," I said, voice low. "I don't want to ruin her day. I just want to know she's safe. I just want to understand." She stood up, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a small folder. Inside were screenshots, photos of messages. Blurry but readable. Most from Emily to June. One from months ago read, "Arthur wants me to cut off contact. Says my dad is bad optics for the family." Another, "He says I need to choose. That if I want to be part of his world, I have to leave the past behind." And then the worst one. "I feel like I'm losing myself, June. Like I'm disappearing just to fit into a dress that doesn't belong to me." I stared at the words. The signing happened?" I asked. June nodded. "Last month. After she moved into his family's house. She hasn't texted me since." My breath caught. Arthur hadn't just turned her against me. He'd isolated her. And now he was marrying her. I stood up, gently returning the folder. "Thank you, June. I don't know what I'm going to do." For my arm. "Be careful. They play clean in public. But in private, they bury people." I looked her in the eye. They've never met a father with nothing left to lose. I walked out into the cold evening air. The city lights flickering like tiny stars on concrete. Traffic rumbled in the distance, but all I could hear was the ticking in my chest. I had 3 days left. And now I had a trail. A man who forces silence. Contract with secrets. A daughter who felt like she was fading. Arthur thought he buried the past. But the past was about to knock on his front door. And this time it wasn't delivering letters. It was delivering justice. The next morning the city buzzed with the same rhythm it always had. Cars honking, vendors shouting, kids skipping school in oversized jackets. But for me, everything moved slower. Time wasn't ticking anymore. It was dragging, pulling me deeper into a silence I couldn't explain. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by old photo albums and memories that refused to stay still. Images of Emily laughing with missing front teeth. Her 8th birthday where we baked a lopsided cake together. Her high school graduation where she clutched my hand so tightly I thought my fingers would bruise. All of it now felt like whispers from a past I was being erased from. But I had no time to grieve. Not now. I had 3 days left until the wedding. And if I was going to stop this from becoming the biggest regret of her life, I needed more than memories. I needed a crack. A weak link. A moment where their perfect facade slipped. So I went back to Willow Ridge. Not to confront. Not yet. I went as someone I used to be. Quiet, unnoticed. Just another man in a uniform. My old postmaster friend still had access to a few of the city's internal route maps. With his help, I identified 2 subcontracted courier companies responsible for private deliveries to the Kingsley estate. And every Thursday, like clockwork, one of those couriers delivered packages from a boutique wedding planner. Followed the van. Parked across the street. Watched the man in a blue hoodie wheel out large boxes tied in white ribbon and disappear behind the back gate of the estate. 10 minutes later, he returned to his van and lit a cigarette, staring at the sidewalk like he'd rather be anywhere else. I approached slowly, hands in pockets. "You deliver here often?" I asked, nodding toward the mansion. He gave me a side glance. "Too often," chuckled. "Must be nice though. Working around rich folks." He scoffed. "They're all the same. Smile to your face. Treat you like a ghost the second you turn your back." I nodded. "What's in the boxes?" He shrugged. "Don't know. Don't care. Just told to drop 'em off every Thursday till the big day. Bride's a looker though. Saw her once. But she didn't look happy." My ears perked up. "Yeah. Eyes," he said, flicking his cigarette. "You can tell everything in the eyes." I watched him drive off and knew what I had to do. I waited until sundown. Until the streetlights began to hum and the neighborhood dogs barked at shadows. Then I moved. Slowly through the hedges again around the same back trail delivery workers used. There were no guards this time. Just the dim glow of interior lights behind thick drapes. I reached the edge of the patio and spotted movement inside. A woman. Slender. Brunette. It wasn't Emily. It was Arthur's sister. She paced the room on a phone call, gesturing dramatically, her voice muffled by the glass. I moved to the far side of the yard, crouched behind a stone fountain. The wedding planner's boxes were stacked neatly beside a side door. I didn't plan to steal, just to look. I untied the top ribbon and lifted the lid slowly. Inside were bridal accessories, veils, hairpieces, and a small binder. I slipped the binder into my jacket and retied the ribbon as if nothing had happened. Back home, I turned every page of that planner with care. Appointments, dress fittings, makeup trials, dresses, contact logs, and one note scribbled in black pen. Bride's father not attending. Security informed. Reminder. No access list. My stomach dropped. They had prepared for me. Locked me out with more than just a digital wall. They had informed everyone I wasn't welcome. And they'd done it long ago. I flipped to the final page. Checklist. Among it. Rehearse bridal walk. Confirm confidentiality agreements. Finalize name change documents. Name change. I leaned in closer. In small print beneath a dotted line. New legal signature to read. Emily Kingsley. My fingers gripped the binder. Emily wasn't just marrying him. She was erasing herself. Her identity. Name. It wasn't tradition. It was strategy. And for a moment I felt the air leave my lungs. Then something else kicked in. Resolve. I returned the binder the next day before dawn, slipping it back into the box unnoticed. No one would know it had ever left. I spent the rest of the day calling every contact I had. Old friends from my postal days. Security guards. Court clerks. Even a journalist I once helped during a city protest who owed me a favor. I asked one question. Had there been any recent legal filings under the Kingsley name related to guardianship or identity transitions? Most said no. Most didn't call back. But then, at 10:47 p.m. I got a voicemail. "Hey Tom. It's Anna. I couldn't say much on the line but you're right to be worried. Something's been sealed in court about Emily. I can't access the full document but it's unusual. Not standard marriage paperwork. I'll try to get more." I sat in the dark, phone pressed to my ear. Sealed. Arthur was hiding something deeper. And Emily had no idea. I needed someone inside. Someone who would be at the rehearsal. Someone close enough to observe without suspicion. So I called June. "Are you sure?" she asked after I explained. "If you can get in even just for 10 minutes, I need to know if she's okay. She says anything. If she hesitates." The next day June messaged me one line. "She's wearing a smile but her hands won't stop shaking." I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. That was all I needed. Confirmation. Emily wasn't fine. She was fading. And now, I wasn't just trying to crash a wedding. I was trying to save someone. My daughter. The girl who once said, "I want to be just like you when I grow up, Daddy." She was standing on a stage built by strangers. And I had 3 days to pull back the curtain. They'd made sure I couldn't get through the front door. But the thing about being a mailman, I always find another way in. The streets were damp that morning, glistening under a thin sheen of rain that hadn't quite turned to storm. Kansas City looked quieter on days like this. The kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful, just expectant, like something was about to break. I sat on the park bench across from the Kingsley bridal venue, a towering building with gold trim and ivy climbing the walls, so pristine it made most of us look like background extras. The main hall had massive arched windows that stretched up 2 stories, draped in pale silk. It was there 2 days from now that Emily would walk down the aisle. And it was there that I would lose her, unless I did something. I had thought about barging in, about standing in the middle of the crowd and yelling out the truth. But shouting into wealth and power rarely works. They don't listen. They smother. They spin. They turn you into a story they can control. The unstable father. The bitter man. The outsider who couldn't let go. I needed something more powerful than rage. I needed the truth. Undeniable, visible, irrefutable. And that meant finding out what was hidden in those sealed documents Anna had mentioned. I called her again, and this time her voice was lower, more cautious. "Thomas," she whispered, "you didn't get this from me, but the filing isn't just about marriage. It's a temporary guardianship transfer. Oh, right. For an adult. It's listed under emergency mental health provisions." I went cold. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means someone convinced a judge that Emily isn't capable of making her own decisions. That, for now, Arthur is her legal proxy for anything requiring consent." My mouth went dry. "But she's fine." "She's not." I stopped myself. "They did this behind her back, didn't they? The record says it was signed by her. But the timing is strange. 2 days after a doctor's evaluation that wasn't performed at any known hospital. And the report was signed off by a private psychiatrist, connected to the Kingsleys medical group." My fingers clenched around the phone. I didn't even realize I'd stood up from the bench until I heard the sharp breath in my chest. "Anna," I said quietly, "can you get me a copy?" There was a long pause. "I'll try. But if they find out I helped you." "They won't." I hung up and stared at the venue again. It now looked less like a palace and more like a trap. Emily wasn't just being pushed into a marriage. She was being declared incapable. She was being erased. I walked the long way back home, every step slower than the last. By the time I reached my front door, the sun was setting, painting the world in that strange golden hour where everything looks softer, even lies. I opened the mailbox and found a plain white envelope. No return address. I brought it inside and tore it open with a trembling hand. Inside was a USB stick. No note. No instructions. Just a black piece of plastic and silence. I plugged it into my laptop, heart racing. A folder appeared. One single video file. Titled 02_Elliot_Cam. I hesitated, then clicked. The screen lit up with grainy footage. Security camera style. A room with beige walls and a polished oak table. Emily sat at the far end. Her hair was tied back. Her shoulders slumped. Arthur was beside her. A legal folder open in front of them. A man in a gray suit sat across from them. The audio was faint but clear enough. "So you're comfortable signing these forms, Miss Elliot?" the suited man asked. Emily looked down. What does it say again?" Arthur leaned in. "Just formalities, darling. Medical access, venue security. Typical stuff. Trust me." The lawyer paused. "She should read it herself." "She's already read it," Arthur said, with a smile so tight it cracked the mask. The lawyer looked at Emily again. "Are you sure, miss?" Her eyes flicked to Arthur. Just for a second. And then she nodded. "I guess." He signed. Paused the video. Stared at the screen. The date in the corner confirmed what Anna had said. This wasn't a mistake. This was coercion. And now someone had sent me this. Someone inside. Someone who wanted the truth to come out. I stared into Emily's eyes in the frozen frame. She looked lost. Not like the girl I raised. Not like the firecracker who once argued with her teacher for grading her unfairly, or who threw a punch at a boy twice her size for mocking a disabled classmate. She had been made small. And the Kingsleys had put her on a leash with diamonds. I clicked open my email and sent the video to Anna. "Can you verify the legality of this footage?" I typed. Then I attached a second message. To June. "Do you think she'd recognize her own signature? Or notice if her copy was different from the one submitted?" The replies came slowly over the next day. Yes. And then Anna sent a final message. "If you confront them with this at the wedding, it won't just ruin their plans. It might be enough to trigger an investigation. But only if it's public." Public. My breath slowed. I thought about the live stream link. About the high-resolution cameras set up for the perfect curated broadcast. About the online guests. The press. The society bloggers. The world would be watching. And for once, so would the truth. But I still had to get in. The venue was sealed. No guest list. No open seats. No staff allowed to speak to outsiders. And yet, I knew a way. I found the name of the freelance live stream technician they'd hired. An old college kid with a production startup, willing to work for exposure and free drinks. His name was Elijah. And I found him through a forum. We met at a coffee shop. He didn't recognize me. Just thought I was some old man with a favor to ask. But I brought him cash. Full envelope. And a lie. "My niece is getting married," I said. "But I can't attend. I need to be in that room just in the back to see it for myself. I won't disrupt anything. I swear." He hesitated. "I could lose my contract if they find out." "You won't," I promised. "I'll be invisible. All I need is 10 minutes. He stared at the envelope again, then nodded. "I have a spare pass." Just like that I was in. Not as a guest, not as a father, but as a shadow, a man waiting in the wings. And when the day came, I would not be watching from behind a screen. I would be standing in the same room. And when the vows were spoken, so would the truth. Friday arrived with the kind of sky that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Clouds hung thick like they were waiting for someone to give them permission to rain. The wind carried a strange chill that slipped beneath collars and cuffs, not quite cold, but unsettling. It felt like the world was holding its breath. And so was I. I spent the early morning pacing my apartment. My shoes creaked on the wooden floor as I checked, rechecked, and laid out everything I'd need for the next day. The USB drive with the security footage. A printed transcript. The sealed envelope Anna had couriered over, marked for legal use only. My suit pressed. My shoes polished for the first time in years. I had done weddings before. Attended a few. Watched others from afar. But never like this. Never with a weight like this one hanging over my chest. At 10:30 a.m. my phone buzzed. It was June. She's been crying. I saw her today. She tried to smile but her voice cracked. She doesn't want this. I know it. I sat down slowly, letting her message settle in my gut like a stone. Confirmed everything. This wasn't cold feet. It wasn't nerves. It was surrender. A girl, once full of life, now walking willingly into a cage she didn't build. Arthur was doing more than marrying her. He was locking her away from everything that ever made her real. I needed to talk to her. Directly. No intermediaries. No digital walls. Just a father and his daughter. So I made a choice. I pulled out the old flipbook she'd made for me in 3rd grade. Construction paper bound with yarn, full of colored pencil drawings. One page stood out. She had drawn herself in a white dress, standing next to a stick figure labeled Daddy. Above them, in sky blue crayon, were the words "My wedding someday." I tucked it into my coat pocket. Then I made my way back to Willow Ridge. The Kingsley estate was busier than before. Cars lined the driveway. Delivery trucks came and went. Flower arrangements spilled from vans. People barked orders into radios. It was chaos, but elegant chaos, the kind meant to impress the outside world. I didn't go to the front gate. I went around the side again, the same back trail. Only this time I wasn't hiding. I stepped out from the hedges and approached the side entrance. The gardener, an older man with a stooped back and dark gloves, noticed me. "Sir, you can't be here. Please," I said, voice low. "I'm her father." He looked at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Then he nodded toward the guest house. "She's alone. But you have 10 minutes. That's all I can give you." I nodded. "Thank you." The guest house was small, modern, and painfully sterile. I knocked lightly. No answer. I opened the door slowly. And there she was, Emily, sitting on a velvet chair by the window, hair curled loosely, a white robe draped over her shoulders. She was staring at the sky like it had said something cruel to her. I turned. Her eyes widened. "Dad!" I swallowed hard. "Hey, Peanut!" She stood slowly, unsure whether to run or scream or cry. I stepped in, closed the door behind me. "How did you?" "Doesn't matter," I said gently. "I needed to see you. Just once. Before all of this becomes permanent." She didn't speak for a moment. Her eyes darted around the room like she was afraid someone might be listening. "They told me not to contact you," she whispered. "They said it would complicate things. That you might cause a scene." I finished. She looked down. I reached into my pocket and handed her the flipbook. Her hands trembled as she took it. "Remember this?" I asked. "You made it when you were 8. She opened the pages slowly. When she reached the wedding drawing, her shoulders shook. They said you didn't want to come." I said, voice breaking. "You asked me not to come." She blinked, confused. "No, I didn't. She paused. "Arthur told me you'd refused. That you were ashamed." A silence stretched between us. I reached into my coat again and pulled out the USB stick. "This is a video. It shows you signing something you didn't understand. Proves that he manipulated you. That he isolated you. That he's using some kind of mental health clause to gain control of you." Her hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "And tomorrow during the live stream, if this plays, everyone will see it. Everyone will know." She looked away, tears running down her cheeks. "I don't know how to get out," she whispered. "I feel like if I run, they'll ruin you. Ruin everyone." I took her hands in mine. "They already tried," I said. "But they didn't finish the job." She looked back at me, eyes clearer now. Stronger. "I want to walk away," she said. "But I don't know how." "Then let me help," I said. "Just like when you fell off your bike and wouldn't stop bleeding until I carried you home." She nodded. "I'll create a distraction," I said. "During the vows. You step away. Just a few seconds. And we'll have someone there to take you out quietly." "What if they chase me?" "They won't," I said. "They'll be too busy trying to silence the tape." She exhaled. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." We hugged then. The kind of hug you only give when you thought you'd lost someone forever. I left the guest house quietly. And as I walked away, I heard her whisper behind me. "Thank you, Daddy." It was the first time she'd called me that in years. Saturday arrived in full costume. The sky was a rich, false blue, the kind that tricks photographers into believing everything is perfect. Birds chirped with mechanical rhythm. Ribbons lined the hedges at the Kingsley estate in pale gold and ivory. Valet drivers in matching vests rushed between arriving cars, greeting guests who wore pride like perfume. Inside, chandeliers sparkled. A string quartet rehearsed softly in the corner. Catering staff carried silver trays like they were holding royalty. The scent of imported roses drifted through the air. Too strong, too sweet. But beneath it all, something darker pulsed. A tension invisible to most. But not to me. I stood backstage. Literally. Thanks to Elijah, the live stream technician, I was wearing a headset, a black lanyard with a laminated tag that said technical crew, and an all-black outfit that made me blend in with the rest of the staff. No one looked at me twice. I was just another shadow helping them make the day look perfect. But I wasn't here to adjust cameras. I was here to break the illusion. The ceremony hall was lined with white chairs and golden bows, each place card hand-lettered in cursive. The altar was framed with arches of white orchids and golden branches. Guests were filing in now. Old money and new, whispering, air-kissing, wearing their finest masks. Arthur stood at the altar, flanked by his groomsmen, each of them cut from the same cloth, tailored suits, fake laughs, and ambition in their eyes. He looked calm, mug, like someone who had already won. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the truth was already in the room. Hidden in the wiring. Embedded in the stream. I slipped behind the camera station, where Elijah was adjusting feeds. "You're sure you've got it timed?" I asked quietly. "Yes," he whispered. "Your file is queued to play at the moment," she says. "I do. No one will know until it's too late. And the stream will record everything." "Everything?" I nodded. "Thank you," I said. He looked nervous. "I didn't sign up for this." "No," I said. "But she didn't sign up to be owned either." He swallowed hard and looked away. The guests were now seated. The officiant stepped forward. The music swelled. And then the doors opened. Emily appeared, framed by light, wearing a gown that shimmered like water. Her veil was long, her bouquet full of tightly closed lilies. But her eyes, that's what held me. Even from where I stood behind the equipment, I could see the storm in them. She didn't look happy. She looked ready. And for the first time in weeks, so did I. She walked slowly, each step measured. She glanced left, then right, as if counting the exits. Behind her, Arthur smiled, oblivious. He probably thought her expression meant awe or nerves. He couldn't imagine it meant war. The officiant began to speak. I didn't hear the words. I only heard my own breath. Every second moved like syrup. "We are gathered here today to join. In love. In trust. Lies all of it." Emily stood across from him now, her hands trembling just slightly. The officiant turned to her. "Emily Grace Elliott, do you take Arthur James Kingsley to be your lawfully wedded husband?" And that's when it happened. The screen behind them flickered. Arthur glanced back. Few guests did too. Then the footage began to roll. Grainy. Low. The security video of Emily signing the document. Arthur's voice on camera, calm and coercive. "Just formalities, darling." The audio filled the room. The whispers began instantly. Guests looked around, confused. Arthur's face turned pale. His hand dropped from Emily's. Then came the lawyer's voice. She should read it herself. And Emily's voice. "I guess." The room fell silent. The officiant froze. Arthur turned to the tech table and shouted, "Turn that off." But it was too late. The damage was done. Emily stepped back. "Stop the ceremony," she said, voice clear. "I'm not marrying him." Gasps rippled across the room. Someone dropped a wine glass. A woman stood and covered her mouth. Arthur grabbed Emily's wrist. "What are you doing?" She pulled free. "Taking my name back." I stepped out then. Not rushing. Not shouting. Just walking forward slowly as the guests parted like water. Arthur stared at me, stunned. "You," he hissed. I held up the flipbook. She remembered who she was. Security moved in. But they didn't stop me. They looked confused, lost, because the truth was out. The cameras were still rolling. And the world was watching. Emily walked to me. Her veil slipped from her hair, falling behind her like a shed skin. I held her hand. Together we left the altar. Behind us, the world they built began to crack. And ahead was freedom. We didn't speak for the first 20 minutes after we left the venue. The car was silent. The roads blurred past. The driver June had arranged didn't ask questions, She just drove, eyes on the mirror, one hand on the wheel, the other holding a phone she never looked down at. It was as if she understood this was a moment too heavy for words. Emily sat beside me, still in her gown, bouquet tossed on the floor like an abandoned prop from a play that had finally ended. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. Her makeup had begun to run, not from tears, but from sweat, pressure, and fear finally exhaled. We reached my apartment just as the sky turned steel gray. Not the kind of gray that promises rain. The kind that just weighs. I opened the door, let her go in first, and for a second just stood there, watching the girl who had once filled this space with laughter now move like she was walking through a house she barely remembered. She turned to me. "It feels smaller," she said, voice almost apologetic. "You've grown," I replied. Then her lips trembled. "I didn't think you'd come." I walked in, closed the door behind me. "I never left." She sat on the couch, her dress folding around her like ocean foam. I poured her a glass of water and handed it to her. She took it with both hands, drank it slowly. "They're going to come after me," she whispered. "They already did," I said. "But you walked away." "They'll twist it," she continued. "The press. His family. My name." "Your name," I interrupted gently, "is Emily Elliott. And that's the only name anyone will be using from now on." She looked at me. Tears finally broke free. "I forgot who I was," she said. "I let them talk for me, think for me. I thought if I just followed the path, it would all be okay." "They didn't love you," I said. "They loved what they could turn you into." "You were the only one who saw it," she whispered. "Because I saw you long before they tried to change you." We sat in silence. Eventually, she kicked off her heels and curled her knees up onto the couch, just like she used to do when she was younger. I brought over a blanket and placed it gently around her shoulders. Her phone began to buzz. Arthur. Then his sister. Then someone named Law Offices of Kingsley and Madden. She silenced it, then turned it off completely. "How long do I have before they try to make me go back?" "Depends," I said. "But we've got time. And proof. Anna is already helping build a legal case. June's testimony, the video, the psychological evaluation. There's enough for an investigation." "They'll bury it," she muttered. "Not this time." Her eyes found mine. "You always used to say justice takes time. But what if it never comes?" I smiled faintly. "Then we fight until it does." She nodded slowly. Then her stomach growled. We both blinked. And laughed. The first real laugh in weeks. I stood, opened the kitchen cabinet, pulled out a box of instant noodles. "It's not a wedding feast," I said. "It's better," she replied. "It's real." We ate on the floor like we used to when she was 10 and insisted the couch was too grown up. And in that quiet, something healed. Not everything. Not fully. But enough to let the pieces start finding their way back. That night, Emily stayed in her old room. I watched from the hallway as she lay in her bed, surrounded by the same posters, the same bookshelf, the same glow-in-the-dark stars that hadn't peeled away in years. She reached up and touched one. "They said you were trying to ruin my life," she whispered into the dark. "I was trying to save it," I whispered back. The stars glowed gently above her. And in the silence, I could almost hear her heart remembering its own rhythm. The next morning the headlines exploded. Runaway bride exposes fiancé's family in live wedding scandal. Video leak reveals coercion before elite marriage ceremony. Emily Elliott walks away from Kingsley heir. Public outcry follows. Our small apartment became a fortress of reporters, legal teams, bloggers, and news anchors hungry for an angle. But we stayed inside. We watched it all unfold through the blinds. Emily's face was everywhere. But this time it wasn't controlled. It was her. Messy hair, puffy eyes, brave smile. A survivor of her own life. By afternoon Anna called. "The judge is opening an emergency review. They're questioning the mental health filing. If it's proven to be fabricated, the Kingsleys could face charges." "Thank you," I said. "You two did the real work," she replied. When the news finally quieted, Emily looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "I don't want to forget any of this." I tilted my head. "You don't?" "No," she said. "I want to remember. Because I never want to be blind like that again." She wasn't just healed. She was awake. And in that moment, I saw the woman she was always meant to be. Not a bride in someone else's fairy tale. Not a character rewritten for reputation. But herself. Emily Elliott. My daughter. And the girl who came back to life. It didn't take long for the world to pick sides. Some people called Emily brave. Others called her selfish. The tabloids had a field day, picking apart every second of the ceremony, every word from the leaked video, every frame of her face as she stepped away from Arthur and walked into the unknown. The Kingsleys, true to form, tried to regain control. They released statements full of soft threats and hard denials. Their lawyers flooded Emily's inbox with warnings, accusations of breach of contract, threats of defamation, veiled reminders that their family had resources and would not tolerate public attacks. The world outside seemed obsessed with a spectacle. Inside our little apartment, time moved differently. Emily barely left her room those first days, but not because she was afraid. She was gathering herself, sorting through all the pieces they'd tried to take away. I'd find her sitting on the floor, surrounded by piles of old journals, childhood toys, school projects she'd saved for reasons even she didn't understand. She'd read out loud sometimes, laugh at the scribbles, cry over the notes she wrote me on Father's Day. One afternoon, she held up a faded card she'd made for me when she was 12. It read, "When I grow up, I hope I remember who I am, just like you remember for me." She looked up at me. "I forgot." "You remembered in the end," I said. She smiled. It was shaky but real. The Kingsleys, meanwhile, were not letting up. Anna came by one evening with a brown envelope stuffed with documents. "They're trying to have the video suppressed," she said. "They're saying it's an invasion of privacy." "It's evidence of a crime," I replied. "The court is reviewing it now. The judge is taking it seriously, but, Thomas, they're fighting hard." I nodded. I expected nothing less. The public, too, began to fracture. Some voices online called for accountability, for justice for Emily. Others, led by the Kingsleys' media allies, spread rumors that she'd staged the scene, that she was unstable, that I had manipulated her for revenge. Emily saw it all. She read every word, sometimes with her jaw clenched, sometimes with tears in her eyes. But she didn't hide from it. Not anymore. "They want me to be quiet," she said one night, her voice steady. "They want to erase me with shame. But I won't let them." So she did something bold. She posted a statement. Not through any lawyer, not on behalf of any cause, but in her own words on her own page. "My name is Emily Elliott. I am not mentally unfit. I did not consent to my autonomy being signed away. I was not given a choice. To anyone who feels trapped by power, I see you. To anyone who feels erased, you are not alone. This is not just my story. It's for every voice they tried to silence. I am not sorry for surviving." The post exploded. Hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands of messages, support stories, confessions from people who had been through something similar. She read them all, replying to as many as she could, drawing strength from the chorus of survivors. And the tide began to turn. The judge ordered the Kingsleys to appear in court. Anna's evidence was admitted. The video was authenticated. The psychiatric evaluation exposed as fraudulent, signed by a doctor who had never even met Emily in person. The so-called contract that stripped her autonomy was declared null and void. The Kingsleys' lawyers scrambled. The press began to dig into their other business dealings. Cracks formed in the empire's walls. For a moment, it seemed like justice might actually arrive. Emily walked into that courtroom with her head high, her name badge pinned to her dress. She answered every question clearly, her voice unwavering. I watched from the bench, heart in my throat, as she told her story. Not the one they wrote for her, but the one she reclaimed. When it was over, she hugged Anna and June. She hugged me the longest. "I'm free," she said, almost in disbelief. "Yes," I replied, holding her tight. "You are. But freedom is not just the end of something. It's the beginning of something else." Emily's story didn't disappear after the verdict. People kept reaching out. Media requests, advocacy groups, college friends she hadn't spoken to in years. They all wanted to know how she had found her way back. She started writing again, journaling, sketching, recording voice notes. Sometimes I'd hear her laugh late at night, her voice echoing down the hall like music that had almost been lost. One evening, she came to me with her old camera. "Let's take a photo," she said. "Why?" "So I remember this," she replied. "The day I got my name back." She set the timer and sat beside me on the old couch. The flash went off, blinding for a second. And when the image appeared on the screen, there we were. Her hair wild, my eyes red, both of us smiling like survivors. No crowns, no contracts, no cages. Just Emily Elliott, alive in her own story. And me, a father finally at peace. In the weeks that followed, our lives found a strange kind of quiet. Not the easy peace we'd once known, but a tentative calm, one that hummed with the aftermath of a storm. The apartment no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like shelter, rebuilt by hands that had lost and found each other again. But the world outside didn't quiet down. Not for a long time. The Kingsleys vanished from society pages almost overnight. Their businesses were scrutinized. Old rivals resurfaced, hungry for a taste of scandal. Their lawyers withdrew after public pressure grew too loud, too angry. A few close friends who had once lined the front row at the wedding now sent messages of regret or silence, neither of which we returned. Emily stayed with me for a while. We built new routines. She learned to cook rice without burning it. I learned how to use hashtags. Our lives grew smaller but in a good way. Each morning we walked in the park with coffee in hand, feeling the simple blessing of unremarkable days. The media tried to chase her. Cameras showed up, hungry for a quote or a picture, especially after the judge's final order landed in our mailbox. All charges against Emily were dropped. All contracts nullified. Arthur's family faced a civil investigation. And as for the mental health accusation, it was struck from every record, as if it had never been written. Emily refused most interviews. She spoke only once, on a live stream arranged by a survivors group. Her words raw and unedited. "I believed my story was over, that I would always belong to someone else's narrative. But the truth is, you get to write your own story, no matter how long it takes to remember your own voice." Her honesty rang out, echoing through the internet far wider than the wedding ever did. The support was overwhelming. Messages poured in, from women and men, young and old. Strangers who saw in Emily's fight a mirror for their own pain, their own small rebellions. A few nights we read them aloud and sometimes we cried, but mostly we listened. And listened. And let the healing take its time. The price of truth, we learned, is that you lose some things for good. Emily lost her old circle, the people who saw her only as a name on a family tree. She lost the fairy tale she thought she was meant to live. But what she gained was something fiercer. A new strength. An unshakable faith in herself. The right to walk into any room and know she belonged there, just as she was. I lost illusions too. I stopped believing that love alone is enough to protect someone. Sometimes you have to fight for the truth, even when the world wants you silent. One day a letter came from Arthur. A real letter, handwritten on heavy paper. "Emily, I wish you well. I wish things had been different. I wish I'd loved you for yourself." She burned it without reading it twice. "Sometimes," she said, watching the ashes curl in the sink, "closure is just knowing you don't need their apology." We made a ritual of marking each small victory. Pancakes for breakfast on quiet Sundays. Walks at dusk through the city that once felt hostile, now just another place to be ourselves. June visited often. Anna called weekly. Our circle grew, not wide but true. And every now and then, Emily would sit by the window, pencil in hand, sketching something only she could see. One day she handed me a drawing. two stick figures, hand in hand, standing in front of a small house with stars above. She'd drawn herself smiling, her hair wild, a little older, a little wiser. She'd drawn me with a mailbag, smiling too. Above, in sky blue pencil, she'd written, "This time I choose the ending." For the first time in a long while I felt peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because the story was ours. And nobody else's. The seasons changed in small ways. Buds on the trees outside the window, the hush of snow fading into early spring, sunlight stretching a little further across the living room rug each day. With each shift, Emily and I rebuilt our lives, not by pretending the past had never happened, but by carrying it differently. Lighter. Not as a chain but as a lesson. We never went back to Willow Ridge. The estate stood there, hollow and golden, a monument to everything that had almost claimed her. Sometimes we'd drive by in June's car, windows down, laughter filling the air, as if to prove we'd won just by surviving. Our world grew gently. Emily enrolled in a night class, art and psychology, her two secret loves. She started volunteering, quietly at first, with survivors who needed to be believed more than they needed to be saved. She'd come home glowing, full of stories and sometimes pain. But it was a pain she could carry because she knew its shape. I took up old hobbies again. Woodworking in the garage, chess at the park with other old men who had stories of their own. Our apartment, once a silent fortress, became a haven. There were new faces at our table. Anna, June, neighbors with kindness in their eyes. Sometimes even strangers who needed a place to land. We framed that last photograph, the one Emily took on the day she got her name back. It hung in the hallway, beside her childhood drawings. Every time I passed it, I remembered not the struggle, but the grace of standing together after everything fell apart. The world, for all its noise, faded into background. The tabloids, the headlines, the social media wars, they stopped mattering. People found new stories to chase. The Kingsleys disappeared, their power only as strong as the secrets they could keep. For us there were no more secrets, just the gentle, stubborn truth. Sometimes at night Emily and I would sit on the steps outside our building, watching the city lights. We didn't need to say much. There was peace in just being. No stage, no script, no mask. One night she turned to me. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked. Thought about it. About everything lost and everything found. About the pain, the fear, the rage, the hope. "Not if it brought you back," I said. "Not if it let you write your own ending." She nodded, head on my shoulder. "I think we wrote a good one." I smiled at the stars above us, the ones that still glowed faintly on her ceiling inside. And in that moment I realized, the ending was never really an ending at all. It was a beginning, a life reclaimed, a voice rediscovered, a father and daughter, whole again in the quiet aftermath of truth. And for the first time truly we both belonged in the story. The one we chose. The one we lived. The one we finally called ours.